Right now, as you're watching this, someone is trying to control you. Maybe it's subtle, a passive-aggressive text, a guilt-laden sigh, a raised eyebrow that makes you second-guess yourself. You feel it, don't you? That familiar knot in your stomach when their approval seems just out of reach. But what if I told you that everything you've been taught about relationships, about success, about being good, is a lie designed to keep you small? What if the very thing you think makes you lovable is actually making you forgettable? Today you're going to discover why the people who seem to have everything, respect, influence, mystery, are the ones who stopped caring what you think about them. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why your desperate need to be liked is the very thing destroying your power. Because they only play those who still hope to be liked. The moment you kill that need, you don't just stop being their toy, you become their obsession. The prison of pleasing. You've been living in a prison built with your own hands. Every yes when you meant no. Every smile when you felt sick. Every time you bent yourself into painful shapes just to fit their idea of acceptable. They trained you well. Smile when it's not real. Agree when your soul screams disagreement. Say yes before you've even thought. When you comply, they call you mature. When you ignore your instincts, they call you wise. But that was never maturity. That was obedience dressed as virtue. You were never meant to be tamed. You were never meant to be their validation machine. But you confused being needed with being valued. You thought their dependency was love. It wasn't love, it was control. Now something is shifting inside you. That's not rebellion, that's awakening. Your true self breaking through conditioning. The moment you fully embrace this shift, everything changes. But change terrifies those who benefited from your compliance. Which brings us to the first law of real power. The Machiavellian truth. Machiavelli never wrote about being liked. He wrote the blueprint for respect. The first rule, you must become immune to their disappointment. You must be willing to let them frown, misunderstand, withdraw approval like they're punishing a child. The second they sense their opinion shapes you, they own you. They mold you, push you, guilt you, threaten you with silence. But when their frowns don't move you, when their passive aggression slides off like water, you become immovable. Real power isn't fighting back. That's reaction. Real power is when you stop reacting entirely, when you stop chasing their comfort and start cultivating your own gravity. People orbit around those who don't orbit around anyone. Think about people who command respect without demanding it. They're not the loudest. They don't need the room to validate them. Their need to please makes them predictable. Your indifference makes you powerful. If you don't need applause, you don't have to perform. If you don't need inclusion, you stop compromising yourself into painful shapes. The moment they realize your emotional thermostat is internal, you begin controlling the climate of every space you enter. But true detachment isn't just immunity, it's transformation. And that starts with understanding where real strength comes from. The source that never runs dry. Your strength doesn't come from defiance, it comes from detachment. Not cold, bitter walls, but clean surgical precision that cuts away what doesn't serve you. The strength to say no without explanation, to walk away without looking back, to do what's necessary even when it makes you the villain in their story. Most people live on a leash woven from smiles and apologies. You cut the leash and kept walking. They'll call you cold, selfish, difficult. That's what they call people they can't manipulate. There's a difference between cruelty and clarity. You don't harm, you refuse to be handled. You don't attack, you withdraw. You don't react, you remain still. That stillness terrifies them because they can't play you anymore. The strings don't work, the tactics fall flat. Words that used to move you echo in empty space. In that silence, they hear truth. You were never theirs to control. You were only pretending, giving them the illusion of influence. Now the performance is over. They're looking at someone who owes them nothing, and that someone is you. Once you stop owing them comfort, you start owing yourself something infinitely more valuable, the freedom you've been denied. You don't owe them understanding. You don't owe them comfort. You owe yourself freedom. Freedom from exhausting social approval theater. Freedom from explaining decisions that don't require consensus. Freedom from being liked by people who would never sacrifice for you. Once you kill the need to please, you start living for something purer, alignment, self-respect, purpose from within. With that freedom comes transformation. You become unreadable. They can't figure out what you want because what you want no longer includes them. They analyze your tone, timing, silences, desperately searching for clues to crack your code. But you've stopped broadcasting thoughts for free. You've locked the gates. When they can't predict you, they fear you. In their world, control equals safety, and you've proven you exist outside their control. You've become the variable they can't solve, the equation that doesn't balance. They didn't do anything wrong. You just stopped doing anything for them. True power lies in understanding how to wield that silence. The weapon of silence. Those who control perception control power. Nothing controls perception more than silence. When you stop justifying decisions, people create their own explanations. When you stop performing worth, they project fears onto your calm. Those projections become obsession, respect, reverence. You didn't change who you are. You changed what they think of you by refusing to play their assigned role. The need to please is a soft addiction that makes you easy to manipulate. It turns self-worth into a mirror they can shatter at will. A raised eyebrow breaks confidence. A passive-aggressive comment derails your day. But now power has shifted. You've become untouchable, not by building walls, but by no longer caring if they climb them. You've learned emotional distance. You give just enough to be respected, never enough to be taken for granted. Your time is earned. Your presence is limited. Your praise is rare, therefore sacred. You've become someone who can walk away without looking back. This makes you dangerous in the most beautiful way. Now they earn what they used to take for granted. They wonder if they're worthy instead of assuming they deserve it. This is where you transition from player to something far more powerful. The myth you become. People start treating you like a mystery, part legend, part mirror. They see in you what they crave but can't control, and that's what keeps them coming back, circling your energy like moths drawn to a flame they can never touch. You're no longer a character in their script. You're the author of your own story, and your story is ruthless. It cuts what distracts, burns what manipulates, silences what drains. You don't scream your power. You whisper it. Your absence becomes their punishment. Your presence becomes their privilege. They can no longer anticipate your reactions, so they start calculating their actions around your unpredictability. Watch how it changes the room when you enter. Watch how conversations pause, how people straighten, how the energy shifts. Not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. You've killed the need to please, and suddenly your yes carries weight. It's no longer expected, it's earned. People lean in when you speak because you no longer waste words on validation. You've trained them to listen, not out of politeness, but out of curiosity. What will you say? What will you do? What matters to you? And the answer is always the same. Only what serves your highest self. This is when they start to realize they're dealing with someone fundamentally different. Someone who operates by rules they don't understand. Someone who has become immune to the very tactics they use on everyone else. The immunity you've built. You don't entertain guilt anymore. Guilt is a leash, a manipulation tactic used by those who've lost the ability to persuade. But shame doesn't work on you. You've faced your darkness, befriended your flaws, stood naked before your own judgment, and found peace. When you've forgiven yourself for being human, their judgment becomes irrelevant. You've built armor from self-acceptance that no one can penetrate. Now you move like Machiavelli's prince, cold when necessary, generous by choice, respected by design. Your emotions are no longer weapons used against you. They're tools you wield with precision. You allow warmth, but only to those who've proven they won't weaponize it. Your kindness is no longer weakness, it's strategy. One you control, one you can withdraw without explanation. They sense this shift. You're still you, but with boundaries that can't be crossed, standards that can't be lowered, self-respect that can't be shaken. This terrifies them because they no longer have leverage. which is why they'll test you. When they test your resolve, they'll test you. The world hates when its puppets cut their strings. They'll provoke with silence, punish with exclusion, guilt you with, "You've changed," as if evolution were criminal. But you do nothing. You don't flinch. Don't explain. Don't justify growth to people who weren't part of your journey. You let their confusion grow because every time they try pulling you back, your calm refusal teaches them. You're no longer someone who can be played. You become the villain in their story, and you wear that title with quiet pride. Because villain simply means person I can no longer manipulate. You are the mirror reflecting their powerlessness. Rather than face that truth, they'll create narratives about your coldness, arrogance, selfishness. Let them write their stories while you live your truth. Their need to explain you is proof of your power. Their inability to understand you is evidence of your evolution. And this journey doesn't isolate you. It reveals who's actually worth your energy. The filter that changes everything. When you stop trying to please everyone, something miraculous happens. The right people start to appear. People who respect boundaries instead of testing them. People who recognize strength instead of trying to weaken it. People who don't need your softness to feel strong, who don't require your submission to feel powerful. People who don't want to play you, they want to build with you. You've filtered your world without lifting a finger. Your detachment has become your greatest screening tool. The desperate disappear like shadows at sunrise. The worthy remain like gold after fire. Machiavelli wrote that people are quick to forget benefits but never forget injuries. The need to please leads to temporary affection and permanent disrespect. But detachment? Detachment breeds permanent mystery and lasting influence. Because they never get to know all of you. They get glimpses, moments, whispers. You remain always just beyond reach, close enough to admire, too distant to take for granted. You've mastered the art of scarcity in a world drowning in availability. And scarcity, as any economist will tell you, creates value. This is where your transformation reaches its peak, where you stop being someone who exists in the world and start becoming someone around whom the world organizes itself. The crown of silence. You must cultivate distance like a throne. Your silence becomes your crown. Your indifference becomes your armor. Your absence becomes your legend. You didn't chase power, you became it. You didn't beg for respect, you commanded it through what you refused to need. Now they whisper about you, wonder about you, study your moves. Every time they try baiting you with the old need to be liked, you simply don't respond. The deadliest players are never the loudest. They're the ones who no longer need to play. You no longer trade your soul for a smile. You no longer shrink your truth to fit their comfort. That's why they fear you. Not because you have power over them, but because you've become immune to tactics they've used on everyone else. The guilt trips, silent treatments, praise turned punishment, it all slides off you like water off stone. You've become weatherproof in a world of emotional storms. You've crossed a threshold. You're no longer just hard to manipulate. You've become impossible to possess. The art of being ungraspable. You are ungraspable now. They reach for you but never touch what matters. You're not detached, you're purified. The parts of you that used to beg, explain, and accommodate have died. And what rose in their place is something people aren't trained to handle. Someone who can walk away without a second thought. Your detachment becomes your gravity. The more you don't need them, the more they orbit around you. You are no longer accessible. You are felt, not held. Seen, but never fully understood, admired, feared, longed for, all in the silence of your self-possession. When they can't control you, they turn to obsession. Not because you gave too much, but because you mastered the art of giving less than they expected. And less, when wielded with precision, is always more powerful than excess. They begin to dream about your voice. Imagine your next words. Analyze your past silences like archaeologists studying ruins. You speak less, and they hear more. You act less, and they react more. Their world begins to bend around the unpredictability of yours. They start living for your attention, not because it's plentiful, but because it's rare. You have made yourself a scarce resource in a world overflowing with desperate availability. And that scarcity becomes sacred. But this isn't the end of your transformation. This is where you transcend from being someone who can't be played to someone who rewrites the entire game. The algorithm they can't decode. They study your patterns like scientists studying a new species. They replay your quiet goodbyes, calculated entrances, moments of almost warmth, followed by cool withdrawal. You've become an emotional algorithm they can't decode, but they try because now their sense of self depends on solving you. What do you call someone who doesn't chase, doesn't explain, doesn't break? You call them unforgettable. You call them dangerous. You call them everything you can't control. Once you reach this level, the air changes when you enter rooms. People modulate voices, choose words carefully, not because you demanded it, but because you've trained them with your silence, your standards, your unwillingness to accept mediocrity. You've made yourself their mirror, and they no longer see you. They see their reflection in your restraint. This is how you dominate without raising your voice, how you lead without asking anyone to follow, how you win without entering the game. Your detachment becomes royalty, not inherited, but earned through self-respect. The royalty of stillness. You don't need a crown because you carry sovereignty in your stillness. And stillness, not chaos, not argument, not drama, is what breaks them. The pause between your words, the way you don't react when they expect explosion, the way you move on as if their tantrum were background noise. Because to you it is. Their drama, their games, their desperate attempts to hook your attention. They don't live in your world anymore. You've elevated beyond their frequency. They try harder now. They apologize more. They compliment with greater intensity, hoping you'll open the gates again. But you don't open. You never did. You allowed access briefly, and now they realize that wasn't an invitation. That was a test, and most of them failed. Because the one rule you never speak but always enforce is this. If they think your affection is owed to them, they are unworthy of it. You're not cold. You're clean. Clean from the mess of emotional dependency. Clean from the rot of constant compromise. You are now someone others defer to, not because you demand it, but because you embody something they recognize as authority. This is why you must never try to be understood. Understanding makes you small. Explanation invites dissection. But mystery is immortal. They respect what they can't define. They chase what they can't capture. You've become both the question and the answer they'll never fully grasp. The economy of attention. You've reversed the entire economy of emotion. In a world that throws attention around like confetti, your silence is gold, your time is treasure, and your presence is a privilege earned through merit, not bought with flattery. They begin to see it, not immediately, but over time. They realize they can't reach you through the usual channels. They laugh harder at their own jokes when you're around, flatter more obviously, perform kindness like a desperate audition, and still your expression doesn't change. Because you're not looking to be impressed. You're waiting to be surprised. You're not seeking entertainment. You're evaluating character. You're not hoping for acceptance. You're determining worthiness. You've shifted from approval seeker to reality shaper. You don't have to convince anyone of anything. You simply live by your standards, and people either rise to meet them or fall away. Those who rise, they start reshaping their behavior to mirror yours, not because you asked, but because they want to remain in your gravitational field. You've become their center of stability in a world of chaos. You didn't ask for this power. You simply became too aligned, too intentional, too uncompromising to be ignored. And those who can't rise to your standards, they become haunted by what they lost. The haunted echo. Your absence when built on power rather than petulance becomes legendary. You are no longer someone they can explain. You're someone they reference. A name dropped with reverence and confusion. They were different. I can't explain why. I just felt exposed around them. That's the echo of someone who stood in your presence and saw the gap between who they are and who they pretend to be. You made them feel that distance, not by telling them about it, but by simply refusing to shrink to their level. This is how you remain unforgettable. You walk out of rooms without slamming doors. You leave just enough silence behind that the space becomes haunted by your standards. They open that door every time they get close to someone new, unconsciously looking for pieces of you in other people. But no one else carries themselves like you. No one else listens with your precision. No one else makes them feel simultaneously seen and judged. Your exits have become your signature. Clean, sudden, final. You're not a person in their memory. You've become a standard, the measuring stick by which all others are found wanting. And standards, unlike people, don't fade. They endure. They haunt. They transform everyone they touch. But you're not finished transforming. Because the final stage of this evolution is when you stop being someone who has transcended the game and become someone who creates entirely new rules. The architect of reality. They can't play you anymore because you're no longer playing their game. You've transcended the board entirely. You're not their opponent. You're the architect of the entire space. You don't roll dice according to their rules. You write the physics of every interaction. And you don't care if they understand your rules. You only care if they can adapt to them. So you stop checking in. You stop replying to silence. You stop being their emotional translator. You speak one language now: alignment. Anything that vibrates out of tune with your frequency simply fades from your awareness. They sense this shift in panic. But it's too late. You're gone. Not physically, but spiritually. You've withdrawn your essence from their reality, and they're left grasping at shadows. Nothing haunts like presence withdrawn. Nothing teaches like attention removed. Nothing transforms like respect that must be earned rather than assumed. You must never explain your evolution to those who didn't grow with you. They didn't earn the map of your transformation, and they don't deserve the coordinates of your new world. Let them guess. Let them wonder. Let your metamorphosis become their mystery. Their confusion is the price of your clarity. Their loss is the cost of your liberation. The symbol you've become. Machiavelli knew that the most dangerous person is not the one who speaks loudest. It's the one whose silence changes everything. That's who you've become. They walk into rooms hoping you'll be there, even while pretending they don't care. They compare everyone to you, even when they try not to. They replay your words, your pauses, your exits, searching for hidden meanings that were never hidden. They were simply above their comprehension level. You're not a person in their story anymore. You've become a symbol, and symbols aren't liked or disliked. Symbols are worshipped, feared, revered, or avoided, but they're never ignored. That is your final ascension, from approval seeker to living symbol, from please accept me to you'll never forget me, from servant to sovereign, from player to legend. And they won't forget you, not because you begged to be remembered, but because you became impossible to erase. You didn't just kill the need to please. You buried the version of yourself who thought begging was power. This is your moment of recognition. You were never meant to be palatable. You were never meant to be comfortable. You were never meant to be liked. You were meant to be unforgettable. The final transformation. There comes a moment when you no longer need to practice detachment because you were never truly attached in the first place. The game doesn't end. You simply stop acknowledging that it exists. You don't retreat from them. You ascend beyond them. What they once called distance, they now recognize as power. What they once labeled coldness, they now understand as control. What they once dismissed as arrogance, they now whisper about as mastery. This is the final metamorphosis. You're not resisting who you used to be. You're transcending that entire identity. The version of you that needed to be liked, accepted, understood, that was a costume worn for survival. But survival is no longer the goal. Excellence is. Sovereignty is. Living as the fullest expression of who you were, always meant to be. You've outgrown their world entirely. Now they watch you with a mixture of awe and uncertainty, unsure whether to approach or retreat. You move like a force of nature, calm until the moment you choose to act. And when you do act, it's never loud. It's decisive. It's final. It's absolute. You don't argue. You simply remove yourself from arguments. You don't warn. You withdraw. You don't threaten. You disappear. You let absence speak in a language they don't know how to interpret. That's what haunts them. You were fully present, and then you weren't. And they can't bridge that void with their usual tactics because you've made yourself immune to everything they thought they knew about human nature. The verdict of your presence. Now your very existence delivers verdicts. Your posture sets standards. Your silence becomes a sermon that preaches without words. You are simultaneously the judge and the scripture by which others measure themselves. They don't know how to handle someone who doesn't need redemption, who doesn't seek forgiveness for being authentically themselves. They're accustomed to people folding under shame, to weakness disguised as humility. But your humility isn't submission. It's precision. It's silence with a razor's edge. It's knowing your worth so completely that you no longer need to advertise it. They test you with absence, with provocation, with manipulation disguised as affection. But nothing works. You remain unmoved, not indifferent, but unreachable. They mistake your stillness for softness until they feel its immovable weight. You are the mirror of their contrast now. In your presence, they see their own performance for what it is, desperate theater. Their need to be chosen feels juvenile beside your refusal to audition for anyone. They realize that you were never part of their audience. You were studying the show, and now you've left the theater entirely, locking the door behind you. Your new beginning. So where does this leave you? Right here, right now, at the threshold of everything you were meant to become. You're not the same person who started watching this video. That person was still hoping to be liked, still seeking approval, still playing games designed to keep them small. But you're different now. You can feel it, can't you? That shift in your chest, that straightening of your spine, that quiet recognition of your own power. You don't need their permission to be magnificent. You don't need their approval to live authentically. You don't need their understanding to make choices that serve your highest good. You are no longer someone who can be played because you've remembered something vital. You were never meant to be their entertainment. You were meant to be your own authority. The people who are meant to be in your life will recognize this transformation and respect it. The people who resist it, who try to pull you back into the old patterns, who punish you for growing, they were never your people to begin with. Let them go. Let them stay. It doesn't matter anymore because your peace is no longer dependent on their choices. You have become untouchable, not because you've hardened your heart, but because you've finally learned to protect it. You don't reject connection, you simply refuse to beg for it. This is your moment. This is your choice. This is your chance to step into the version of yourself that others will spend their lifetime trying to understand. So take it. Take your power back. Take your peace back. Take your life back. Because the world doesn't need another person desperate to be liked. The world needs someone exactly like you, unbreakable, authentic, and absolutely unforgettable. And that someone is you. The question isn't whether you'll be liked. The question is, will you ever be forgotten? The answer starts now. If this resonates with your journey toward authentic power, subscribe to join others who refuse to play small, because transformation shared is transformation amplified.